We're going to get Peter Mathews on next because I want to get his take on it. You know, he is a political science professor at Cypress College and our political analyst on this program. Want to get his perspective on it and see if there is any silver lining to what has been a horrible storm cloud. KTLK AM 1150. It is your voice. I'm David Cruz. We'll begin with breaking news. Okay, here I am yakking, saying I don't like the deal. Well, guess what? The president doesn't like it either. President Obama moments ago rejecting the proposal from John Boehner. Let's get the latest now. Peter Mathews, political science professor, you're hearing me tell you, as I am our listeners, New York Times breaking the story just moments ago, that the president has turned down the offer.
Yeah, I was tracking it. I heard it as well. And that's because the demands are too high. In fact, Boehner said that we'll have to have a partial shutdown continue in exchange for a 6-week extension on the debt limit ceiling, which is not enough. And they want to discuss dismantling Obamacare also in the negotiations that come right down the line. And they also want to discuss limiting Social Security and Medicare, cutting back on those. So Obama said, no way.
It's really a lot to compromise on. Let me share something with you. The LA Housing Authority has been saying that this is now beginning to have the potential for a very serious consequence on lots of people in terms of their housing. If it's Section 8 housing, thousands of employees also who take care of the housing of people who need the program are also being affected. Our border security is being affected. It seems, Professor, that even in the face of all of that, Boehner simply is unrelenting.
It does, and I just cannot understand it because he needs to put the American interest ahead of his own as Speaker. He wants to get reelected Speaker. He's afraid to alienate those few, well, I say few, about 80 Tea Party Republicans that he wants their vote on. Mm-hmm. But he needs to do the right thing right now, Dave. This is so important for the country and the world. I mean, China and Japan just warned us yesterday there'll be global consequences for the global economy and the financial markets. Huge amounts of layoffs, and inflation will skyrocket. Interest rates will go way up. It'll make a big chaos. It'll be worse than the Great Recession, David.
And let me just reinforce again that when you look at a guy who's looking at his own political agenda versus the reality of, imagine this, Professor, the LA Housing Authority has taken a hit for $46 million, and we're talking that's already happened. Plus, they say if this debt ceiling is not changed, if we don't deal with it, their funding goes away. We don't even make it till the end of the year.
Exactly. That's going to be thousands of people on the street without Section 8 and other kinds of FHA itself will be cut back, too. That means there won't be guarantees for middle-class people to buy homes, the first-time home buyers. It's a big fiasco, and more than that, Dave, it's a tragedy. I'm telling you, the people of America have to call Boehner's office and all of the legislators, especially in the Republican Party, and say democracy is not a spectator sport. This is an active activity. We've got to be involved in it as people. Otherwise, these members of Congress, especially Boehner and the other leaders who are Tea Party-leaning people, will ignore the rest of the country while they just seek to get reelected their own positions in their own districts.
Now, let me also bring you up to snuff on the border security issue that I just mentioned. Yesterday, one of the far right-wing online blogs is putting out the word in their radio broadcast online that the border is open, that thousands and thousands of border security guards have been removed, and that they're portraying it like we've opened the borders, which is not altogether true. However, we do know that a lot of the support staff has been furloughed. We do know that even the normal salaries of border agents had been in jeopardy. And this notion that we can piecemeal the budget, why is that in a democracy not a solution? You've studied, I'm sure, many governments over his history. What is it about piecemeal budgeting like this? It doesn't work.
It doesn't work because there's no sense of firmness of what's going on in the economy, and business people cannot plan their purchases. They can't plan their hiring priorities. By the way, the unemployment rates went way up. The unemployment, the looking for unemployment benefits,
yes,
way up again that's partly because of this. Here's something else, Dave. Section 4 of the 14th Amendment requires, it says the U.S. federal debt has to be honored. And any law that came after that, like the Congressional Act that actually brought in the debt ceiling limit, which was a Congressional Act, it wasn't the Constitution, that constitutional provision supersedes any kind of Congressional Act like the Debt Ceiling Act. So I would say President Obama needs to go by the Constitution and say, I'm going to order the Treasury Department to make all the payments that have to be made to keep America running. And he can do it. I'm sure he can do it. Certainly there will be a protest on the part of the right-wing Republicans and the Tea Partiers. They might even threaten to impeach him. But in the end, the president has the Constitution on his side, and he'll win. He'll prevail. And it'll buy us a lot of time to really get this thing under order. And we've got to do both. The debt ceiling has to be increased, and furthermore, the budget has to be negotiated so we wouldn't have so much debt anymore. They should close some of these unproductive corporate loopholes, David, where corporations are getting subsidies from the government and paying no taxes. That money could be brought in to balance the budget, pay down the debt, and fund America fully as well. That's what should be talked about right now.
It's interesting when John Boehner left the meeting today along with a bunch of Republican members of Congress, they didn't even want to talk to reporters. What do you think they will now come back with? If the president said today, I cannot accept this as a compromise, the standoff continues. As you pointed out, one deal could be dealing directly through the Treasury to pay the bills. But do you see another way? Is there anything that can be done to break the logjam, perhaps by the judiciary? Is there any help we can get from the courts?
Again, it would have to be taken to the Supreme Court, this particular case, and it'll have to be appealed. That takes a long time, and the court will then end up deciding that the president is probably acting constitutionally if he does that because of Section 4 in the Amendment 14. And I think the court will rule in favor of the president, but it's going to take too much time, Dave. Right now, the American people have to get on those phones, call all of these members of Congress, especially in those Tea Party districts, call Boehner's office, flood his office, tell him he's got to be a speaker for the United States House of Representatives, not a speaker just for his right-wing faction of his right-wing Republican Party. And that's got to be made clear by millions of people, Dave. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. And we only have a few days left here before we hit the deadline.
You know, my concern...
Look in the markets. Look at the stock market. It came back up today only because they thought there was going to be some agreement. Yeah. Now what's going to happen tomorrow? Watch this, Dave.
Yeah,
it's going to go back down again.
Exactly. But listen to how the far right is describing this. Representative John Fleming of Louisiana says there won't be a vote on a temporary extension of the debt limit unless the president agrees this afternoon to sit down and talk with us. Well, he did talk, and he listened. He did talk. He listened. And it says this is no deal.
These guys are completely out of reality, people like Fleming. I mean, they're not even telling the truth because he did sit down and talk. He listened. He negotiated. And then just basically they pushed him away and said, we are still sticking to our unreasonable demands. By the way, I think it's unconstitutional what they're doing. The Congress's constitutional duty is to pass the budget when it's needed on time, and it's supposed to also increase the debt limit if need be because their own law requires that. But they've got to keep the government funded and operating. And these members of Congress who are blocking it, I believe, are going against the Constitution.
Okay,
so it's got to be put at that level.
Professor Peter Mathews, Cypress College, let me just share something just coming in from the Treasury. This is a statement coming from Treasury Secretary Jacob J. Lew, and this is what he is saying. He says that the Treasury Department has run out of extraordinary measures, that's a quote, to free up cash in a matter of days. He says that the country's bills might overwhelm its cash on hand in addition to any receipts from taxes or other sources. He also says this, there is no plan other than raising the debt limit. The legal issues, even regarding interest and principal on the debt, are complicated. So if the head of the Treasury, if the Treasury Secretary is saying we are not a workaround, we can't help, we are truly, our backs are up against the wall.
Yeah, this is crunch time. It's the truth right now. And frankly, we actually ran out of our debt ceiling problem was actually breached back in May of 2013. We've only been hanging on because the Treasury Department has used extraordinary measures to keep us open, like bookkeeping, other kinds of accounting measures. And he's right. Now we're at the end of our rope. And believe me, we cannot let America hang. We've got to get this country back on our track. David, the only way we could do is to have thousands of people call these Congress members right now and get off of their whatever they're doing right now. This is the most important thing for all of us.
You know, I just saw a few days ago, again, the movie Lincoln. I had to see it in this context. And I have to tell you, there is a point at time where you want to take some of these people and put them in shackles because their behavior threatens the very viability of this country economically.
Absolutely.
And I know that will sound to some of my listeners as being very extreme and unreasonable, but what they are doing is extreme and unreasonable.
It does threaten the economic viability, which means the financial viability, and our life chances for so many people. My students will lose out on funding, federal funding for their Pell Grants, other things, and there's so many soldiers. Now, what happens when there's no money to pay the soldiers, David? Think about that. As you know, there was a stopgap measure to keep the death benefits paid, which was outrageous. That was the death benefits to the soldiers' family should have been paid immediately.
Absolutely.
That was held up.
Well,
this is completely out of control, and I think we need to do something about it.
Well, we are going on Congressional Watch, you and me, for the next few days, and Professor Peter Mathews, as always, thank you very much.
Just one more reminder, democracy is not a spectator sport. People got to get involved.
That's it. Thank you very much, Professor Peter Mathews, our political analyst, Cypress College. You know, he said something very important. You can't just watch it from the sidelines. This is your opportunity to use your voice. Call your member of Congress. Express how you feel. Whether we agree or disagree politically on some things, if we're running on fumes and we all end up stranded along the side of the road, what does it have to do with an argument inside that car? We're both stranded along the same road. It doesn't make any sense. But then what the Republicans are doing in this context seldom does.